discussions as needed, and especially understanding that many of you are from Bordhaman. So I believe that it's a shared responsibility for educators like Ab Initio and for people like me who have just, kind of made a very small mark in a niche field like media and entertainment laws without, anybody to handhold. Also, importantly, it doesn't really matter where you come from. This is before I start off because I really don't believe that you need somebody to start off. I only did a senior practice under a senior for just 6 months before I ventured into independent practice. It has been a very learning curve over them. You just need to, stay grounded and, start off everything pertaining to how you want to see yourself in the, next 5 10 years, if you at all want to do it. As a person like me, if you have heard what Priyadarshini said, I since also there is a contention behind why two master's degrees and two bachelor's degrees, because I didn't have a very streamlined trajectory in my academic and professional career. I had got through best of the places pertaining to journalism. I was a corporate lawyer with Fox and Mandal for a brief time as well, just out of Bordhaman University. And I left the job overnight. So point is that you just need to know where you want to go, and if you do not need to know, still you will make it fine in life. So there is no problem. So yeah, before starting off with why media and entertainment laws, so I would like to keep this a little interactive. বাংলায় বললেও কোনো অসুবিধা নেই. If you can answer, that would be something that I am looking forward to, so that you can give me a brief idea. This is the perhaps the third of those places where I'm delivering a keynote lecture on media entertainment laws, because that is something very few people, at least in this part of West Bengal, practice, because the industry is very small. The industry is suffering a lot. The industry doesn't have much to offer in terms of original content, because most of our copied or copyright infringed things from South India, from North India, and mostly that's how the industry is going. There are no original films per se. The writers, the screenplayers, they're my friends, and I have spoken to them, and it's like, if you have a very original and good aesthetic content on which you can develop your story and kind of make a movie on the same, there are repercussions, because it will not fetch you enough revenue, and revenue is something that we all need to, fuel our household, to fuel our hunger. So that is a problem with the media industry. That's the first thing why I start off with is I need to give you a very realistic picture if anyone wants to venture out. It's not that there are no places where you can take up a job after your graduation. There are so many places you can do that, and it is media entertainment laws is not a specific law per se. It is a just sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's not a specific law per se. It's some combination of commercial contracts. It's a combination of negotiations. It's a combination of intellectual properties, mostly pertaining to copyrights. Copyrights is a major part of the same, and trademarks to some extent. These are basically the things. Also, a huge part now with the OTTs and everything in place, with the new cinematograph bill in place. I believe that there is a huge potential for media industry if the payment of the remuneration of the lawyers is given a kind of a boost, which doesn't happen in this part of the country. So I would like all of you to understand with a very open mind that the practice in itself is a very niche practice, meaning that it's a very specific practice. It does not have that charm, as you say, monetary charm right now standing in this part of the country, as you have it a criminal as a criminal counsel, because if you have a good criminal practice, you might have unaccounted money. So that is something that is there. But if you're someone who's very passionate, who's very driven by the art and aesthetics, who's very driven by what is very creative in this space, to understand the regulations, to understand compliances, I believe that there is nothing better than a media and entertainment practice per se. So basically, it's a combination of the most greatest part of media entertainment laws is the IP part. Now, I can give a theoretical framework of how how kind of the media entertainment industry works, or how they are being regulated. So I'll just give a brief idea. Now, coming to the whole point of the matter is that, I'm sorry if the camera is not in a proper angle, because this is I'm joining from the phone. My laptop isn't in a proper shape. So I hope that this is visible. All right. So now coming to the point, where do we start off when we are talking about media entertainment laws? Where do we start off? Now, I'll not talk about the movies per se. I'll just talk about the fact that there is something like a print media, there is something like a broadcasting media, and there is also something which regulates now most of majority of the consumer. Right now they hold the consumers in place. What is that? That is OTT. OTT is something that you're watching now. The recently released, I had consulted with, I recently, the last consultation I did was on Khaki, where Mr. Jitendra Madnani Jeet had played a major role. So since I'm his counsel, I had worked on the contracts, the agreements, and I'll also briefly tell you how the contracts and the agreements work. So I think it will be more towards the practice side, but also there will be theoretical aspects of it, because without reading the theory, no one can understand the practice in place. Because it's a very niche practice. Again, I just repeat, the practices that I do is very niche practice. It's not very well remunerated in terms of how you are trying to look at it. But once you have a good name in the industry as a young counsel, I think the work will be flowing in. That is the most important thing that you always do. It's not a crowded space, because people generally don't uh, schools do not teach you IP well. And also importantly, what IP practice around in Calcutta, it is mostly pertaining to trademarks filing, which is again a very boring work. It's a very tedious file work in place. But what the copyright part of it, the IP litigation part of it, and how the defamation and how the Obscenity Act and how everything works in place, including the recent Ranveer Alabadia case, it's a very interesting, interesting way how the laws work in our country. Now, if we are looking at, I'll just briefly talk about a little about the Press Regulation Books Act, which started in 1867. That was back in the day when we were colonized, and the Press Council Act that came later in 1978, which should be around 67. 67 is 100 years, 111 years later. Now, what are they actually talking about? They are talking about the basic principles that whenever you're doing some kind of advertising, whenever you're doing some kind of you're showing something on the TV, they should not be baseless. It should have some legal backing. It should have some compliances in place. It should not be misguiding. Also important thing, if most of you know or do not know, I'll just try to brief. Have you seen people, anybody, have you seen people advertising, this actors advertising on gutkha and pan masala and, chewing tobacco, any forms? Have anybody seen? Anybody can answer. Just let's have a interactive session, because that will, I think, you know, keep us hooked to the very thing. Anybody can tell me. Banglaয় বলতে পারিস? Anybody? Let's talk. I see Munshi here. Is Munshi here? Munshi আছিস?
Yes,
Bardhaman
sir.
University. Oh, sorry. Oh, you are a different Munshi. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm so
yeah, yeah. No.
I'm so sorry. I thought that this is Munshi from Bardhaman
I know.
University.
You thought male Munsi, male Munsi.
ওকে, অলরাইট অলরাইট। এনিবডি, কেউ আমার সাথে জাস্ট আমাকে একটা ব্রিফ আইডিয়া যদি দিতে পারো বা পারিস, পার্টেনিং টু হোয়াট রেগুলেশনস ডু what do you see in a মানে an actor doing a good ad, because you have seen Pierce Brosnan also was criticized for doing the same without knowing the fact that this is something that is pertaining to regulated legal space. Can anybody tell me? Anybody? মানে কি দেখেছিস? Anybody? Okay, all right, no problem. So precisely, that space tells you that the recent ASCII guidelines with certain disclaimers. Okay, Vivek, একটু microphone on করে, let's talk. I'll not ask you questions. We'll just talk. Hello. Acha, he's not interested. So precisely, guidelines, ASCII guidelines, এটাই বলে যে we are not going to promote something that is very injurious to health. Now, well, when it comes to tobacco, when it comes to cigarette packets, these are all falling under media entertainment laws. Why I'm saying it falls under the
So,
very pretext of, Vivek, bol,
so.
tell me.
The,
Hello. Yeah, please tell me. I'm listening. Tell me. Acha, no problem, no problem. I think that you have a network issue, no issue. So precisely these are the guidelines that are generally given by ASCI, Advertising. This is the Advertising Council of India. So these are precisely the compliances that one needs to follow while you are promoting a particular product or an advertisement in place, and that is how you have seen that whenever you are smoking a cigarette or whenever you're buying a cigarette packet, there is written that smoking is injurious to health. That goes for the movies as well, because your form of entertainment should not be something that should be promoting. These advertisements should not be promoting something that is injurious to health, that is health hazard, that is under the purview of health hazards. Same goes for alcohol, same goes for the chewing tobacco. What is permissible is also mentioned under this rules and regulations. So in media practice, what is a very important thing is that what are the rules. There is something called the rules. ASCII rules are there, ASCII acts are there. So there are acts and there are rules. So the rules are also very important because those are the procedural compliances that you need to see. এই rules গুলো এটাই বলে যে you can use the word pan masala instead of a gutka. So pan masala is something that you are chewing. The pan masala is something that you are chewing, but at the same time, it's not a pan masala; it's a gutka. But you have to mask that. You have to mask that by means of saying that it's a pan masala. So these are the very basic things that you can see around. If you see around, these are the very basic things. Now coming to the specific guidelines, there are some communal disputes which cannot be shown. There are also some music reviews that cannot be done. If there is something pertaining to a religious sentiment, that cannot be shown. So these are the basic guidelines that you have to maintain. You cannot show something that might incite communal harmony, that might incite security, that might cause a harm to the security of the country, security of the country in place. So these are the things that have been decided by the government of India, and with the recent regulations pertaining to the broadcasting and broadcasting laws, things have become more stringent. Why are we studying media laws? Media laws is not only pertaining to the actors and the actresses, because the only a small part of it is pertaining to how the cinema industry or the music industry works. A greater part of it lies in the fact that whatever we are seeing around us, the censor from starting from the censorship, starting from what movies can a child see, what movie can a grown-up adult see, these are the things that have been made very accessible under the guidelines. But at the same time, what is more important is that these are the new laws in place, are a means by which the government is trying to keep a vigilance on the people concerned. Now, very basic idea is that anybody knows who is the controlling authority or the regulatory authority pertaining to the broadcasting of various shows in India? Anybody? Anybody? Hello? Anybody? Okay, no problem. There's a body called when it comes to the financial regulations, it's always the SEBI. When it comes to banking, it's the RBI, and when it comes to the broadcasting, it is called TRAI. Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. If you go to Calcutta also, there is a branch office in TRAI. So they place down all, and also since we will talk about the career opportunities as well. Once in 3 years or 4 years, they also release something called a young researcher or a young professional by the government of India under TRAI, the broadcasting, wherein you work with these contracts. So I have a couple of friends, juniors working there as researchers who are developing a policy around the broadcasting space. They can be lawyers, they can be policy professionals. So it's a very interesting multidisciplinary area where you can actually work. Now coming to the fact of why are we talking about broadcasting media? Because broadcasting media after the 1990s have become very popular. 1990s a key হয়েছিল 1990s there was this economic regularization. There was something called economic revolution. Manmohan Singh gave out something that had become a blueprint for the development of the country, the economic development of the country, and everything started going, shot up from there. The economic perspective. Again, it came down, obviously, much later. So, এই সময়টা the broadcasting regulations came into fore. And right now, when we are talking about the broadcasting regulations, there is something called a television broadcasting. There are intermediaries. ওইগুলোর মধ্যে গেলে will not be able to complete in 1 hour. This actually needs a complete, like, this is a subject in itself. It actually needs around 6 7 hours to actually understand the entire structure of how it works. But I'll just briefly touch upon whatever points, because I made a very brief point, but I need to speak on the same. So ব্রডকাস্ট মিডিয়া ইজ সামথিং দ্যাট, যেটা তুই ব্রডকাস্ট করছিস টিভিতে যা দেখছিস, তো এখানে এদের মধ্যে দ্য টেলিকম রেগুলেটরি অথরিটি ইজ রেগুলেটিং দ্য সেম, অ্যান্ড অ্যাজ আ রেজাল্ট দ্য রেগুলেশন অফ দ্য টেলিভিশন, এর মধ্যে কিছু অ্যাক্টস চলে আসে। একটা 1995 অ্যাক্ট আছে, সেই অ্যাক্টের নামটা হচ্ছে কেবল টেলিভিশন নেটওয়ার্কস অ্যাক্ট অফ 1995। দ্যাট ইজ আ ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্ট অ্যাক্ট। নাও তারপরে যেটা আসছে সেটা হচ্ছে যে পলিসি গাইডলাইন্স, উইচ ইজ গাইডলাইন্স ইন ইন্ডিয়া, যেটা হচ্ছে আপডেটেড রুলস, যেটা 2022-এর পরে এসছে। এই হচ্ছে দুটো জিনিস। তারপরে একটা খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট পোর্শন এসছে, যেটা হচ্ছে যে আমরা কিভাবে এই রেগুলেশন গুলোকে ধরার চেষ্টা করছি। আমাদের রেগুলেশনস গুলো এমনই হওয়া উচিত যে আমাদের এই দিস পার্টিকুলার টেস্ট ইন হাউ উই আর লুকিং অ্যাট আ পার্টিকুলার অ্যাডভার্টাইজমেন্ট, আ পার্টিকুলার ব্রডকাস্ট, আ পার্টিকুলার সিনেমা, আ পার্টিকুলার শো, আ পার্টিকুলার লাইভ শো ইন প্লেস, এগুলোতে কি আমরা রেগুলেট করতে পারি। নাও ফর এন এক্সাম্পল, ইউ আর ডুইং আ পার্টি, ইউ আর ডুইং আ ইউনো পার্টি, যেখানে হচ্ছে ইউ আর প্লেইং আ লাউড মিউজিক, বাট দ্য পয়েন্ট ইজ দ্যাট পার্টিতে হয়ে গেল হাজার লোক, আর পার্টির মধ্যে এমন একটা গান চালাচ্ছিস যেটা তুই হচ্ছে লাইসেন্স কিনিসনি। এগুলোর জন্য লাইসেন্স কিনতে হয়। সেই লাইসেন্সের গাইডলাইন্স আমি পরবর্তীকালে, ইফ আই ডু a certain other seminar which will be an extension of this seminar, I'll definitely get into this, because these are all, because I'm speaking very loud, very fast, because there is so much to cover and so less time to kind of cover the entire thing. তো একটা আমি জাস্ট এক্সাম্পল দিয়ে বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করছি। একটা যখন গান চলছে, আমরা জাস্ট র্যান্ডমলি একটা কোনো কলেজের ফাংশনে একটা র্যান্ডম গান চালিয়ে নিলাম, সেখানে হাজার জন হয়ে গেল। এগুলো কেউ দেখে না, বিকজ দেখে না মানে দিস আর নট সামথিং দ্যাট লেম্যান ডু নট আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড, ইভেন লয়ার্স ডু নট আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড পার সে, আনলেস দে আর প্র্যাকটিসিং আইপিস অ্যান্ড আনলেস দে আর প্র্যাকটিসিং স্পেসিফিক লস। তা কি হয় যে there is something called জানি না আইপি যখন পড়িয়েছে in colleges and or wherever you have studied IP, there is something called uh, bodies, copyright societies. The copyright societies gulo, which will give you these licenses to play this particular music at a given point in time, তার জন্য পয়সা দিতে হয়। বিকজ এই লাইসেন্সেস গুলো কিনে রাখে হচ্ছে এই পার্টিকুলার কোম্পানিজ, এই লাইসেন্স গুলো কিনে রাখে হচ্ছে পার্টিকুলার কোম্পানিজ, এন্ড দিজ আর কল পিপিএল, ফোনোগ্রাফিক পারফরমেন্স লিমিটেড, পিপিএলস। অ্যান্ড তো আহ, এই পিপিএল এইগুলোর পরে সবচেয়ে সবচেয়ে স্ক্রিন রাইটার্স অ্যাসোসিয়েশন, ফোনোগ্রাফিক পিপিএল যেটা আছে, পিপিএল ইজ দেয়ার ইন ক্যালকাটা এজ ওয়েল। অ্যান্ড these are the কালেকটিভ these are the collectives যেগুলো হচ্ছে এই আমাদের কপিরাইটস গুলোকে ধরে রাখে এই মিউজিক গুলোতে। তো তখন তুই যদি গান বাজাতে চাস, ইউ হ্যাভ টু বাই দ্যাট লাইসেন্সেস ফ্রম দেম অ্যান্ড দেন প্লে দ্য মিউজিক, বাট হাফ অফ দ্য পিপল ডু নট ডু। তারপর the society can actually send you a notice and you have to kind of do give a show cause as to why you did it or pay the money. So it's a very open scenario, to be very precise, something that people do not actually understand. So arekta, there is also something, so there's also a body in there's also a body in Bombay, which actually looks after the writings per se. So these writings are what representative of whatever you see on television, তার জন্য একটা স্ক্রিপ্ট তৈরি করতে হয়। So স্ক্রিপ্ট সেগুলো হচ্ছে সাধারণত they are registered, even যদি আমি ওয়েস্ট বেঙ্গলে বলি, there's a west in West Bengal, what you see is that when a movie is being made, you have to actually make it registered with this body called EIMPAI, EIMPAI. Also, when it comes to national repository of the copyright pertaining to the screenplay, এই যে সিনেমা, গান, গান না, আই এম কিপিং দ্য মিউজিক অ্যাসাইড, মুভিজ, এগুলো যেটা অরিজিনাল কপিরাইট, সেগুলো হচ্ছে একটা কোম্পানির সাথে থাকে। দিস আর প্রাইভেট লিমিটেড কোম্পানিজ পার সে মোস্টলি। ইটস কল আইপিআরএস, ইন্ডিয়ান পারফর্মিং রাইটস সোসাইটি, আইপিআরএস এর এখন চেয়ারম্যান হচ্ছে জাভেদ আখতার, মানে হচ্ছে যে ফারহান আখতারের বাবা। সো চেয়ারম্যান বলছি, প্রেসিডেন্ট ইজ জাভেদ আখতার। নাও এই কপিরাইট সোসাইটির কাজ হচ্ছে এটা, ইউ উইল রিড অ্যাবাউট কপিরাইট সোসাইটি ইফ ইউ আর রিডিং আইপি প্রপারলি অ্যান্ড কপিরাইটস অ্যাক্ট প্রপারলি। What is important is that we need to understand the nuances of how the media regulations actually work. So এগুলো খুব hands on, এগুলো কোথায় কেউ শেখে না, মানে এগুলো কেউ, no one teaches that in law school. Once you get into the industry, you will understand that this is a complete repository of something very unique, very interesting, and how you're protecting the rights of these people concerned. Area of work কি কি হতে পারে? Area of work can be pertaining to the contracts and the agreements. Contracts কিরকম হতে পারে? There is something that you are making a movie with a director, কারণ অনেকগুলো কনসিডারেশন আছে, উই নিড টু আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড দ্য কনসিডারেশন সেপারেটলি। We are making a movie. I am a production house pertaining to say Dev Entertainment Ventures, দেব যে সিনেমাটা করলো, খাদান তৈরি করলো, তখন একটা পার্টিকুলার কি বলে, একজন সোসাইটির সাথে দে আর ট্রাইং টু, সরি, একটা সোসাইটি বলছে, একটা ডিরেক্টরের সাথে দে আর ট্রাইং টু ডু দিস agreement, and the agreement needs to be signed. The agreement says few very basic things, that is, we are signing this agreement but and giving you money to buy your rights, buy the rights of the movie from you. Buy the rights of the movie money, we are buying the rights of the movie, the screenplay of the movie, how you want to do the movie, everything, the IP, the entire IP portfolio of the particular person who's writing the movie will come to the production houses. এখানে এক্সিট ক্লজ সাধারণত থাকে না, দ্যাট ইজ সামথিং দ্যাট আই ট্রাই টু কাইন্ড অফ কোঅর্ডিনেট অ্যাজ আ কাউন্সিল অ্যাজ ওয়েল। বিকজ আমি যখন একটা ক্রিয়েটিভ মানুষ, আমি একটা ব্যবসায়ী হাউসকে, production houses at the end of the day are ব্যবসায়ী house, they do not care about how the actors do or what the actors do, their well-being and everything, they only need the money to be raised out of whatever it is, that is a problem. But point is that they are buying the entire IP rights of the person who's creating that IP. Intellectual property pertaining to writing a particular script, giving a screenplay to that particular script. So everything is contained within the same. তো আমি এখানে একটা খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট ক্লজ, আমি যদি রিপ্রেজেন্ট করি প্রোডাকশন হাউসকে, আমি একটা ইম্পর্টেন্ট ক্লজ দিয়ে দেবো যে এই সিনেমাটা, এই গানটা কোনোদিন তুমি বিক্রি করতে পারবে না। আমার যদি সিনেমাটা না হয়, তাহলে একটা পার্টিকুলার অ্যামাউন্ট আমি তোমায় দিয়ে একটা পার্টিকুলার অ্যামাউন্ট, দ্য অ্যামাউন্ট দ্যাট আই হ্যাভ গিভেন ইট টু ইউ, ইউ আর সাপোজ টু রিটার্ন দ্যাট টু মি, or that if I do not make a movie on the same, I'll return it to you, and you're supposed to give a percentage of whatever I've given it to you back to me, and you take your movie and do whatever you want to do with the movie. So that is the place where the contract negotiations perfectly works. The contracts also can be between actors, the actor, and the production house, the actor কতদিন থাকবে, what are the key consideration in this particular contract, how many days the actor will be shooting overseas, how many times it will be out of station, what kind of accommodation that must be provided, and if not provided, what compensation can be given to the same, what will happen if he's doing some. This is a very important thing that you need. Latest considerations that we are actually looking at in the industry is something called an insurance. What is an insurance? Supposedly একটা actor কিছু করতে যাচ্ছে, ধর একটা অ্যাকশন সিন করতে যাচ্ছে, তার পাটা ভেঙে গেল, তাহলে কে দায়িত্ব নেবে? দায়িত্ব নেবে হচ্ছে ওই কোম্পানিটা, প্রোডাকশন হাউস। তো এটা আমাদের এই জায়গাটায় হয় না, বিকজ আওয়ার বাজেট ইজ ভেরি স্মল, 2 crores 3 crores ইজ আ মুভি, ভেরি গুড ওয়েল মেড মুভি। রেস্ট আমাদের ওইখানে হচ্ছে একটা অ্যাক্টরের রেমুনারেশন ইজ অনলি 2 and 3 crores, so it's a very different scene altogether. So there we add something called the I have only done two projects in Bombay. So what we do there is something, we add something called an indemnity clause pertaining to an insurance. What do you do there? Supposedly, if his leg breaks, he will get X amount of money for the recovery. And also, if any pipeline project is up there, মানে ওই লোকটা শুধু তো ওই একটা সিনেমা করছে না, বম্বের একটা মাল্টিপল মুভিজ একসাথে করে, তো তখন তো ওইগুলো বাকিগুলো করতে পারবে না। সো ওইটার রিপারকাশন কি হতে পারে, তার আগেনস্টে কতটা ড্যামেজ হতে পারে, সো ইন্ডেমনিটি ক্লজ উইল বি অ্যাডেড টু দ্য সেম। অ্যান্ড পয়েন্ট ইজ দ্যাট production house বলবে যে you will protect me from any other criminal liabilities in this perspective, we will give you this amount of money through an insurance company or an insurance agent. This is how the legalists work out there. This is a very new concept, and this is what has been developed by this wonderful firm which works in Bombay. It's called Nike and Nike. I have been mentored by them for a pretty long time. Not mentored as in I haven't worked with them directly, but I have worked with my seniors who are working there right now as senior associates, as principal associates. So they, I got to know this idea from them, and this is something I try to incorporate in my contracts that I make for the actors out there. So recently I made a contract for Rajat Aboda. So the pertaining to the contract actually had this negotiation in place. This is a person who is already having some স্পাইনাল ইস্যুস, রজতাভ দত্ত হ্যাজ সাম স্পাইনাল ইস্যুস অ্যান্ড লেগ ইস্যুস। সো যদি ওর শরীর খারাপ হয়ে যায়, তাহলে 6 মাসের জন্য হাউ দ্য স্পন্সরশিপ উইল ওয়ার্ক লাইক, সিন্স হি ইজ মেকিং হিম ডু সামথিং which is very um, physically very exhausting. So these are very important consideration. Law is not something that you see around like how your college teaches you or how you go about doing this thing. Law is very interesting, it's very developmental in phase, meaning that you develop these things out of practice. Whenever you're doing a practice which is very essentially something very unique, these kind of gets into you and you try to develop new clauses around the same. খুব ইন্টারেস্টিং ক্লজেস অ্যাড করা যায়, টু বি ভেরি প্রিসাইজ। একটা সেগ্রিমেন্ট হয়ে গেল, আমি একটা সেগ্রিমেন্টটা আবার সরিয়ে দিলাম। দের ইজ সামথিং কল মিউজিক ডিরেক্টরস এগ্রিমেন্ট, মিউজিক ডিরেক্টরস ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড মিউজিক ডিরেক্টরস এগ্রিমেন্ট। সেখানে কি কি তোমাকে প্রোভাইড করা হবে, ইউ হ্যাভ টু মেনশন, লাইক দের ইজ সামথিং কল্ড আ মিক্সার, যারা মিউজিক ইন্ডাস্ট্রিতে আছে দে উড নো, দের সামথিং কল্ড আ মিক্সচার, দের সামথিং কল্ড আ ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড টেপ, there are certain hard drive components that is being there, মানে hard disk components that is there, some software that is in place, everything is added within the clause, যে এইগুলো প্রোভাইড করলেই তবেই আমি এই টাইমের মধ্যে I will be able to generate the same. Similarly, there is something called a VFX, a VFX agreement. VFX agreement, they have this technical things pertaining to the VFX. So as a lawyer, your work is not only to know law. Whatever business you are associated with, law is a very emerging field. You cannot be limited to something that is only there in the books. Copyright se kichu lekha nei eguloর ব্যাপারে, nothing is written about it, but you have to know about the business that you are doing. Supposedly I do transactions as well, মানে me as a person, I do transactions, I do not go to the court, to be very precise. So anyway, if you are around and your relatives might ask, what do you do? You say, and they will believe that you are not doing anything because you're sitting back at home, but that is not the point. The point is, I do not go to the courts. I do litigation very, very, very less number of litigations that I do throughout the year. I think my junior is also here. Is my junior here? Is Majid here? No, Majid is not here. Okay. So we do transactions, a lot of transactions and a lot of drafting. My chamber is mostly a drafting chamber. What we do in the drafting chamber is that we have loads of drafting pertaining to the SLPs, pertaining to we do appearances before the Supreme Court and before the NCLTs and all. So I do the drafting part of most of the senior advocates who are actually just appearing for the same. So it's a fact that you develop your practice around something that you are very comfortable in. And if you're not comfortable, you're just not just going forward with the same. So these are very nuanced things that you need to understand while you get into the practice. I knew nothing when I, left Burdwan University in 2022 and to start on my own. And this is something that I've learned on the go. No senior also taught me this. On the go, when you are in a business, when you're in business environment, you need to read up. And the lawyer's work all throughout his life is to just read up. Just read up. Everything that I've studied over the last 11 years of my academic life has been put into practice. Everything. Whether I've studied literature, which is far removed from law, they've helped me to draft better. My English has helped me to draft better. I started off from a Bengali medium school. I started off from a very basic Bengali medium school. And then I shifted to convent schools and I picked it up from there, my accent or however I speak. So there is nothing that you cannot do. The most important part of how you are going to approach a particular practice that you want to do or you want to learn about is something that is something that you have to make yourself believe. So the technicalities of how the IPs work on the media industry would also lead to something called a privacy concern. Now, privacy concern is something that is a very important thing that is not talked about. We have the EU GDPR policies. EU GDPR policies meaning that there is data protection rules based on which our Indian data privacy laws have been scooped around. That is the only thing. Why IP is an universal field? IP is an universal field because that is the only thing that has been taken from the European Union laws, and that is very, very, very well drafted, and it's very similar. So anyone who's practicing IP can practice in any part of the world. That is a very unique thing. So if you're practicing IP, if you're doing IP, if you're doing IP litigation, that is the best thing that you can do. You can take up foreign cases as well, not as a paralegal, but you can do just advisory work for your foreign clients. So that regulations is something that you need to understand in a media industry while being in a media industry. So there are so many other contracts also pertaining to. There is something called a co-producers agreement. Co-producer agreement is perhaps the most complicated of those agreements in place. Why it's a complicated agreement? Because co-producer is some meaning that you and I will produce a film. What will be our stakes in the particular film? What will be our responsibilities? What will be our shared responsibilities in a particular film? That's why I'm saying develop a practice where you can draft from scratch. You do not have to base it on any templates because on the internet half of the templates are very flimsy. Half of the templates do not have half of the clauses, so you need to know your Indian contract act at the back of your hand. You have to know your CPC. I would not say at the back of my hand because I also do not know CPC very well, but you need to know that if you're practicing something along the IP lines and you have to take perhaps an injunction for a particular case, you have to know your IPs as well, your CPC as well. So these are the things that you need to understand. That you have to know your contract act very carefully. You have to know your specific relief act very carefully. You have to learn the rules and regulations pertaining to the business per se, and you also have to do something that will make you very relevant with the updated laws, because broadcasting laws is something that is ever changing, because everything is, because the government is looking at all those perspectives from which it can carve down the rights of the citizens in place. So if you're supposedly watching an OTT, the OTT will, how many of you seen that there are certain things called an age clause added to that particular thing, and the regulations pertaining to the age clause. What are the age clause have you seen in a particular film? When the film starts, there is something called an age criteria: who can see the film, who cannot see the film. Can anybody kind of give me an idea about the same? Anybody? কি দেখেছিস, কি দেখেছিস, কি জিনিস দেখেছিস?
Sir,
Anybody? হ্যাঁ,
there's
সৌজন্য।
UA,
হ্যাঁ, there is UA.
UA,
Okay.
there's
এ
only A,
দেখেছি স্যার।
and another one is U.
Another one is U. আচ্ছা।
Yes.
UA টা কি আর ইউটা কি দেখেছিস?
UA depicts that it's like it's probably like I don't have any
হুম।
like I don't have any idea about that, but still a rough idea I can give you. Like UA is for those who are above 16 years of age or something like that.
What is
U is
A-rated
for
movies? What is A-rated movies? Anybody? What is
A
A-rated
is
movies?
the
A,
adult
adult.
adult film.
Adult-rated movies।
Yeah,
18 বছরের উপরে
above
you can
18
watch
years.
it।
adult
হ্যাঁ।
sir, and UA means under adultery.
Very good, very good. That UA একটা UA প্লাসও আছে, any idea about the same?
UA plus. Probably it's for the universal professionals few movie which are only depicted for the professionals or something like that.
আচ্ছা, ওকে ওকে, why it's called UA, তাই তো? এবার UA টা মানে এটা কোথা থেকে এসছে, any idea about the same?
Mm.
মানে ভুল বললেও there is no problem, কিন্তু there are certain other
স্যার
subcategories as well.
বলছি যে
There's something called, হ্যাঁ
ইউএ মিনস
বলো।
স্যার কে দেখতে পাবে কে দেখতে পাবে না সামথিং লাইক দ্যাট কি?
ওটাকে বলে
ইউএ মিনস আন্ডার আর্টিকেল।
আনরেস্ট্রিক্টেড পাবলিক এক্সিবিশন। ইউএ 7+ও হয়, ইউএ 13+ও হয় অনেক সময়। সেন্ট্রাল বোর্ড অফ ফিল্ম সার্টিফিকেশন বলে যেই বডিটা আছে, সেন্ট্রাল বোর্ড অফ ফিল্ম সার্টিফিকেশন, সিবিএফসি যেটা আছে, দে অ্যাকচুয়ালি প্রোভাইড ইউ উইথ অল দ্য কি ডিটেলস। এখন কে আছে সিবিএফসি তে? এখন আছে প্রসূন যোশী। Prashant Joshi is a chairperson. So CBFC is actually giving you all the, the certifications and the guidelines pertaining to how the how the films would be allowed to watch in theaters. In theaters আমি বলছি কেন? কারণ এইগুলো যখন এটা প্রাইভেট ভিউইং হয়ে যায়, আবার আমি ওই জায়গাটায় চলে আসে যে what can be pirated, what cannot be pirated, what you can watch, what you cannot watch. এগুলো these are very dicey places and you need to navigate yourself around the same. U certificate actually যাদেরকে দেয়া হয়, they are unrestricted public exhibition. তার মানেটা হচ্ছে ফ্যামিলি ফ্রেন্ডলি, they are mostly educational, they are family oriented, so এখানে কোনো প্রবলেমই নেই। ইউ বাই এ একটা আছে। ইউ বাই এ একটা কি? সেটা হচ্ছে মডারেট অ্যাডাল্ট থিমস আছে, সেটা দেখতেও পারে নাও দেখতে পারে। এজ থ্রেশহোল্ড ওটা আগে 12 বছর ছিল, 12 বছরের পর যেটা হয়েছে সেটা হচ্ছে যে এখন ওটা 16 বছর করে দিয়েছে। ইউ বাই এ যেটা, যে কিছু একটা অ্যাডাল্ট কিছু জিনিসপত্র আছে, কিন্তু তার সাথে ইটস মোস্টলি ইটস ভিউয়েবল, অসুবিধা নেই। তার মধ্যে সাব ক্যাটাগরিজ আছে ইউএ 7+, ইউএ 13+, ইউএ 16+, এগুলো আলাদা আলাদা করে এখন সাব ক্যাটাগরিজ করে দেওয়া হয়, এগুলো নতুন রেগুলেশনস। এ সার্টিফিকেট আছে, এ সার্টিফিকেট ইজ মোস্টলি বিকজ ইটস সামথিং কল্ড কোট আনকোট, যেটা সিবিএফসি, if you read the license, if you read the guidelines around the CBFCs, you will see that there is something called nudity. Now the concept of nudity is very strange, because supposedly if MF Hussein is talking about nudity, he will draw a Saraswati who is not clothed, but at the same time I do not believe that that is disrespecting our cultural heritage, because you see that most of the gods and goddesses, I would know, I might just maybe put under scanner, but I will not say something which is very oi. But for ages uh, our goddesses are those we celebrate, they have been made, they have been put up in a way that that they represent the most crude form, the most raw form of human instincts. So I do not think there is something which is very bad. I'm not in support of MF Hussein, or I'm not against what has been done to MF Hussein, but I say that it comes with a pinch of, it must be taken with a pinch of salt pertaining to what nudity can, because nudity is celebrated all across the world. When we read about Vatsyayana's Kama Sutra, which has been written some XYZ hundreds years ago, so he's talking about nudity from perspective of art and aesthetics. So something that can be related along the lines. So I do not believe nudity is something that is that kind of nudity and vulgarity. There is a difference between the same. So I believe that there is thin line of difference between nudity and vulgarity. And nudity is something related to art and aesthetics. Vulgarity is not. That is a public restriction that should be levied on what is um, vulgarity. So coming to the S certification is something that cannot be viewed in public. This is something most of the people do not know. Air certification is that these are the only specific movies made for, say, very secretive films, made for the scientists, made for our doctors. They're permitted only to view these particular films, and nobody else can see the film. So these are called S certificates. Just go back, check. It's called S certificates. Now, principalities around surrounding principalities surrounding why the media entertainment laws must be given a very important regulation. There is something called a self-regulation. Now, these radio, there's something that we will not touch upon, which is called a radio broadcasting, because radio, half of the people do not listen to radios. And what is permissible under the Radio Broadcasting Regulation Act, or the there's something called a Wireless Technology Act as well. So Wireless Technology Act, if I go into that, that will be a different ball game altogether, and I'll just not venture into the same. I will venture into why we need to practice media law as something which is regulatory in nature, which is very procedural and practical in nature. Perhaps a few of the practices which are very procedural and which are very practice oriented is the media entertainment laws, number one, and number two is the corporate transactions which we do every day, pertaining to mergers and acquisitions, pertaining to how two companies are merging, pertaining to the debentures pertaining to ESOPs, how you're drafting the shareholders agreements. These are very procedural. These are very specific. এগুলোতে templates কাজ করে না. You have to study the nature of the business in order to understand. So a regulations on the blocking content na you when you see that the information technology IT act এর মধ্যে যেখানে safeguard বলছে there are rules, right? The safeguard rules, safeguard from whatever you say, blocking access rules, I think information technology rules, I think 2000 9 বা 10 হবে, I just forgot that. So ওটা কি বলছে যে we are not supposed to show things which are kind of affecting the sovereignty and security of the country, which are talking about say the friendly relations with our neighbor countries. We are not supposed to show a movie যেখানে someone is beating up our neighboring country, we are killing people from a neighboring country, we are doing a war with a country, something that is not exciting. মানে exciting means exciting the sentiments of the people, exciting the sentiments of the people, not exciting per se. So um, so the regulatory regimes are something that we need to understand, and the changing framework of a country which is undergoing so many transformative changes as an economy, we need to do our fact checking in place. That is something I will come down to. Now when we're drafting, the first thing as corporate lawyers, I do not call myself corporate lawyer because I do both transactions as well as a little bit of litigation as well pertaining to civil litigation and commercial litigation. So people who are doing only corporate transactions, they do something called a due diligence. Due diligence meaning when you're buying a property supposedly, or you're supposedly not. Yes, please. You raised a hand. Orijit, please ask a question. Orijit, please ask the question. Orijit,
My question,
yes,
you said that no film can be made on something which may amount to hurt or incite communal feelings.
no
But
film
you
should
when
be
you
made. Can be made is not the point. No film should be
okay,
made. That's
and
what the
you
rules
also
say.
mentioned that
Yes,
nude picture of Ma
It's about
Saraswati.
morality, na?
it speaks about morality perfectly. That's the
Yes,
Then
question.
get it.
I mean,
There are so much movies which is
okay,
based
okay.
on this
My
topic.
question is, if
Yes,
first
yes.
comes in contradiction with the second, then where is the thin line between them? And in case of contradiction, what will follow?
In case of contradiction, what will follow? Now coming to the point of communal tension, as we are growing as a developed nation, a developing nation, what we must understand that the idea of the morality has changed so far. In 1990s, if some woman, some married woman, I'm being very precise, if some married woman would have gone out in something which they back in the day would have called quote unquote scanty clothes, it's very normal why they should not be wearing, because it's their body, it's their choices, and whatever they're supposed to wear should be worn by them, and that is how things should be around, because that is what they feel comfortable in, comfortable to the skin. So no one has a right to say anything. Now the society works in a manner, still people will say that at standing in this 21st century also, women have difficulties in going out with whatever they feel is right for them at night. It happened back in the 1990s as well. So even with the transformational changes over the years, this is a very sociological perspective question. Even coming to the changes, people's view has not kind of changed. We are growing towards. Yes, please ask. Orijit, please.
My question was particularly in
On
relation to,
Saraswati.
yes, Ma Saraswati, nude picture of Ma Saraswati.
Nude picture of Ma Saraswati. Have you seen the picture by M.F. Hussain? Do you know the
No, no, no.
controversy pertaining
I
to
have
this?
not seen.
I would
But
just, I just implore you to, go back and see the picture. It's not an, it's a, it might be a picture which quote unquote critics have not said that the government when they were putting charges on Mr. Hussein, for which he has to leave the country, as we all know, and died there. The charges when he was levied on this particular person, the question was that whether nudity and vulgarity can be equated together. Now people will say that we are a nation who have seen ourselves, growing out from the clutches of what should be considered strictly um, uh, strictly familial to something which is liberal, growing towards a liberal. Now he did not paint it because it was not liberal. He painted it because that is how the gods have been represented. Now there is another question. There is a question of religion. I would not go into this because this is not strictly pertaining to this, because I would perhaps would have spoken about it when it's about censorship, the idea of the censorship. But I'll tell you, because you just asked the question. If he would have been a Hindu individual, if he would have been a Hindu individual and would have drawn a painting, because all the goddesses, they come in nude forms, we are not supposed to see that as vulgar. Every such god is coming, but the pictures of gods, they are seen in the most crude form, and that is how we celebrate them, we worship them. It is not something that is removed from the reality. It is how things have been so far. It is how people have painted them for so many years. There is no difference between the same. He has drawn that only. But since he was a Muslim individual and since he was drawing a Hindu goddess, there was a repercussion. So it's there are dimensions of religiosity in the same. I do not want to go further into the debate because the debate will be taking us away from it. I just mentioned it because this is something, the case is something very interesting and you should go about reading the same. That is all I'm saying. Just a moment. Just a moment. Hello. Yes. Um, where is the okay? So coming to this very basic idea, I would definitely talk about it. I have spoken about this. I have a entire paper. If you would like to read up on the same, it speaks about um, art and aesthetics and forms, and the censorship in India's cinema and new age and new age policy. Just a moment. Art and aesthetics and the new media, how new media portrays what is admissible and how new media actually controls our entire narrative pertaining to this. So while we are talking about new media, we must also keep in mind that there are certain things which have been made so blatantly communal by people who do not want to celebrate the art form as they are. There have been problems and repercussions. It's not pertaining to people per se or people what they wanted to portray, but that has happened over the past few years. There is a beautiful book on by DK Jha. um, you must go back to reading about it. It's not related to media and entertainment laws at all. But since you're talking about censorship, that is something that you must go about. He's a historian. It's a book on history and about how we have celebrated cows and how the entire the controversy around beef eating and everything pertaining to this, whether we should do it or not. You must go about reading it. Everything is related to everything. Law is a very multidisciplinary subject, and that is the best part about it. Coming back to media and entertainment laws, now the freedom to access the government information, that is also forms a part of the media and entertainment laws. How can we access the government information? The RTI is one of the most important things by which you can access government information. But recently there is a certain political party who did not disclose the information about a very high standing person in the party pertaining to his educational qualifications, because that is something that could have quote unquote affected the sovereignty or the integrity of the nation. How? I do not know. How? I will never know. How? If you have answers to that, you might just answer, but I do not have an answer to the same. How? Because there are two things to it. Whenever you're filing a nomination, if anyone has been a part of any political nomination filing, which is also a part of a practice that you can develop, but into public policy, it's a public policy practice. You file nominations for the candidates of various political parties. There is a form which you do before the elections, which you fill in before the elections, telling his assets, his education qualification, anything that is a lie out there is debated before the before the standing committees, if there is any lie pertaining to the same after the elections are over. So you cannot lie there. You have to say the truth. So that is also something that we have seen over the years, that people have lied there. And how it works, God only knows. And how the regulations work on paper is something very different from how it works on in real life. Now you can take public actions. You can take public actions pertaining to how this entire thing has been, the same has been shared in the chat. Okay. So the copyright and related laws in the media and the entertainment industry is something that we must understand by in the purview of under the purview of the Copyright Acts of 1957. Now the Copyrights Act, there are a few things to understand. Now you're claiming the authorship. Number one, the main thing is that you're claiming the authorship of a particular thing that you are doing. Claiming the authorship would also mean that you are protecting your own reputation. That is the question of defamation that is coming into play, and to not have a work that is freely attributed to oneself, meaning that it is not freely attributed. A particular work which belongs to a particular person cannot be just given away freely. You have to do it against a particular consideration, and that is how it works. Now the entire concept of how the courts have seen this particular thing is also very dicey, and there have been constant challenges and constant regulatory hazards while these are being put forward. So personally, I believe that these laws needs to be somewhere down catered to the procedural aspects, because that is something that one needs to understand within the purview of media and entertainment laws. Digital content and the OTT services are something that has come to the fore. Regulations have become very strong. Singapore has a very strong regulations. We are trying to develop something around the OTT rules and regulations. The broadcasting bill actually talks about the same. It stops the intermediaries, and it actually gives a provision to the government to actually access this entire, entire the content before it actually goes for public viewing. That is when we go to the theaters or when we go to this particular say OTTs, and kind of see this particular movie. Before that, the government will do an entire screening. Again, that's a problematic area, because if everything works according to the same, what will come under the purview of what is accessible and what is not is again a question. The same works in another different fashion. If watch the movie Garm Hawa, and Garm Hawa, which is one of the finest movies ever to be made, and how the government did not, release the movie. How government did not allow the release of the movie for years before it was actually released. There is a interview of the, interview of the director concerned, and it's a beautiful interview. Just should go and watch it. Garm Hawa is the name of the movie. It's one of the finest art films ever to be made, and how the censorship policies work on the same, you'll just understand the same if you go and watch the movie as well as the interview. So there is again a concept of, I'll just briefly go through it, because we are perhaps we are approaching the time that must be needed. There's something called a royalty. Anyone understand royalty? You will understand the concept of the book. You buy a book, you are being published by an author, but by a publisher. The publisher gives you royalties based on the book, 10%, 20% royalty, meaning that he will publish your books for free, your intellectual property for free. Your intellectual property they will be taking over, and you will get a royalty out of the same, meaning that if it's a 100 rupees book, you'll get a 10% or a 20% royalty from the sales of the book, because that selling price is might be 100 rupees, but his making price is not 100 rupees. His making price is perhaps 50 or 60 rupees, and you will get a royalty based on the selling price. That is how the royalty works mostly. Coming to this very idea that the royalty concept of the royalty would definitely come around to, if you just go back to section 39A Copyrights Act, or if you are reading, I think it's the broadcast regulations of the performing rights are coming under section 19 and section 18. Just go through it once. I don't think I'm wrong, but I'll just still, keep it keep it simple out there. So the what do they actually say? Now they say that there is this entire idea that the performer when he's performing, an actor when he's acting, a writer when he's writing, his royalty rights cannot be inalienable, meaning that that cannot be taken away from him. It states that, you know the receiving royalty under section 39A is something that he must get, and section 18 and 19 would apply in the case of this broadcasting, reproduction rights and the performing rights. That is a basic thing that Copyrights Act says. I don't have the book in front of me, so I would have been able to give a much better deliberation, but this is more or less what they try to, maintain. Now, coming to what the conclusion might look like. Now, media practice as a whole has come to a point where you will be constantly under regulations of the government of India. The TRI regulations, the regulations pertaining to how this entire trajectory of compliances must be kept in place. The CBFC certifications will work in place, and you have to constantly work with your clients to get all the clearances done. That is how you are working as a lawyer in the first place. Very interesting proposition is again a proposition is that when some writer is writing. Suppose I got a very interesting project which I cannot delve much about. So you have to do an entire legal research on whether all the scenes are in compliance with the right laws of India or not. That can be any laws. That can be obscenity laws. That can be laws pertaining to legal rights of a person. That can be BNS as well. So everything you need to research so that the story is based on a particular concept that does not overlook the legal complications that might arise if the movie comes to the fore. Because in India right now at this point in time, getting a case on yourself is the easiest thing while you are making a movie or doing something which is creative and which is liberating at the same time. And I'm not going into any political discourse on the same, but this is how they are as individuals. This is how people who are working in the creative industry face all the time. If your idea is original, if it is something that questions the government in power, they'll always come lashing back on you. And if it's something that's supporting the government, you will be accoladed with immensely. So that is how it has been working for years, and that is how it will work for years. But the conclusion must be drawn that we must ensure a very stringent data protection privacies when we are watching films. We must have a very strict policies around what children can actually view. The parental control that comes in your remote TV's remote do not work. There is also other informations pertaining to the fact that the children's informations are often they are regulated. They are regulated in the name of regulation. The informations are leaked and they go to third party intermediaries. The intermediaries are the can be the best of the people in the business, they can be the worst of the people in the business. That is why sometimes when you go to a restaurant, perhaps you might just get a inform you just might get calls, random calls from these banks and all. Just take up the credit card, will give will give you xyz discounts on per transaction pertaining to eating out in the restaurant bill. Same happens when you swipe your card at many such petrol pumps right now. Especially this is happening, I do not know if you've noticed or not. If you are driving a car and they have this thing like we'll get 2% extra fuel, you have to pay that amount first, and then you'll be getting 2% fuel. Supposedly 1000 rupees, you'll get 20 rupees fuel extra. After that, what I have noticed is that through whichever bank is providing that particular scheme or scheme in place, you'll get a call from that bank saying that you must take this credit card up so that you get further cashback on the same. So that is a theft of the information that we do not see. A digital protection rise. I'm not talking about IT per se. This is also pertaining to the movies. There are certain licenses that we do not read. While you are opening Amazon Prime, there is something that you need to read, which is called the which is called the licensor and the user terms. You only click on those terms without even seeing what is written there. Read it. As lawyers, your first work is to do due diligence. What information are you providing? What information you must provide? Also, there's a very important thing is that whenever you're sharing your Aadhaar card information pertaining to anything per se, wherever you're visiting hotels or whatever it is, actually under the rule, you are not supposed to give your Aadhaar card. মানে Aadhaar card which shows all the numbers, it should only have your last four numbers, rest should be blocked. But do we do that? We don't do that. We are not even allowed to do that because the entire number is being asked. So you're not supposed to share the number at all. But that happens. So the intermediaries are very important aspects of how the data is being transmitted, how this entire trajectory of this data transfers across various mediums and how it reaches the consumers per se are coming to us. So this is something that is must be regulated in a better way, because all the acts, they are either in transit or they are just halted by the government or the policy recommendations in place. Also very important part of the media practice that you can develop if anyone wants to do a media practice is do policy recommendation. I do a lot of policy work even at a time when I didn't have enough briefs while just coming out of Bardhaman University and leaving my plush corporate law firm job. What I did was that I did a lot of policy briefs. To the best part is to fill the stop gaps. There are moments in your profession in which you'll not have briefs, and that can be at any time of the profession. At the beginning of the profession, while you are working with something, you might not have briefs. So the idea is not to leave it at one go. You just keep studying. You just keep studying the new regulations, which will help you to work better. Coming to the fact. Coming to this point, the policy regulations around the media entertainment laws is something that is very interesting. You can write recommendations to the TRAI. You can write recommendations to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting and give them serious recommendations pertaining to any policies in place. There is something called a public recommendations that are released, public consultations. It's called public consultations. It will be released by a press note by the government of India through its IT or whichever. The new acts will be coming in place, and you can give your recommendation. This is the portion I feel is problematic. This is the portion that is not in line with this particular act, say supposedly under the EU guidelines or supposedly under any other transnational or international law guidelines under the under XYZ policies. You can use them as references, and you can actually write that this is what I think can be made difference. You can write it under a letterhead, you can just write it as a normal human being. So these are the kind of recommendations that you actually can do while you are developing a media practice. Going beyond the media practice also, you can do such kind of things, like for example, out of the 2 3 emails that have been sent constantly to the Ministry of Railway and the Ministry of Railway and the what is it called, the Metro Railways Kolkata, pertaining to this Abhaya incident where the train networks were not available, the metro rails were not amply available on those nights where these meetings were held in place. My chamber, with the help of my juniors, we had sent in repeated recommendations to the the chief, the chief of the Metro Railways Calcutta, sending representations. These are called representations, and if that doesn't work, what you do is that use a representation as a legal notice, put it in your public interest litigation, and file a public interest litigation before the High Court. That will be in the form of a writ. You know how the writ works under Article 32 and under Article 226, whichever is applicable for the same. So that is how it works, and it's a very beautiful way in which you can do public policy advocacy. Policy advocacy is the finest of the advocacy that you can do for because people do it in the form of in a way that they want to show that they have a very they are very conscious of the society. It's not that they want to actually popularize themselves, but to use it in a manner that will actually help the society at large. I believe that these are the policy recommendations that you can actually send out as individuals, as just a person, nobody else, to send in that these are the problematic areas. I believe these are the problematic areas in the broadcasting regulatory activities that might be a hindrance to the entire functioning of the same. And this is the way I want the government to kind of reconsider the same, so that there are better frameworks which will help in the governance, help in the digital governance, help in the transactional governance, everything coupled together, and make it a very streamlined and easy procedure. That is how you do your media practice, and that is how. Also, an important thing before ending is that something called non-disclaimer, non-disclosure agreements that you have to constantly do in media, in while practicing a media as a media entertainment lawyer. So you need to get your drafts very well thoroughly checked. Huh? Your drafts need to be brilliant. You have to learn your drafting from scratch, and these are not the drafts that you will find online. Use online drafts, and you will be mulled over while you are trying to make a practice out of the same, because later, when these are like transactions pertaining to 10 crores, 15 crores of your client, and then there is a problematic place, excuse me, where you do not have not mentioned anything about a dispute resolution or how it should be done. You've written will just go to the courts, and you have not written about arbitration or a negotiation before it, like a private negotiation before it. Why would you pull that to the court? In media, the first thing you need to understand is that it's a very face oriented industry. You have to maintain a face, you have to maintain a mask, you have to maintain a very good reputation. So if you bring something to the court, that's the end of your reputation somewhere down. So you do not want to go to the court. So what you have to tell your you know tell the people you are providing your services to is that go for the negotiation, go for a private round of negotiation, do a mediation, do a commercial mediation, get the clauses sorted, get a new clauses done in place. Do These are the things that you have to develop a strategy as a media lawyer, so that your business can be protected. Having worked with few of the actors who are very frenzied and very demanding as a whole, which often gets to my nerves as well, because I am generally a very calm person. You have to know your clients and you have to work accordingly. That is the whole point of the matter. Because in this industry, in the showbiz industry, everything that you see is not gold. Mostly that you see is not gold. Only a little part of it is. They have to maintain their stance, and that is how they do go about doing the legal as well. So legal is what they do not need, but they must have, and that is how you need to pitch your services to the clients. That this is something that you might get online as well, but this is something I'm providing my expertise in, because I am somebody who practices something that others do not practice. That is something you have to pitch. That is how I build my clientele as well. Whatever there is, XYZ clientele as well. So that is how you need to go about doing a practice that no one will tell you about. Nobody will tell you about. So you have to go about doing something that will help you. Also, networking is very important. If you're in the showbiz industry, networking is very important. Oftentimes, I'll be very blatant while I say this as well. You have to look proper. You have to look proper. You have to dress unnecessarily good for no whatsoever reasons, and you have to always keep yourself updated on social media, on LinkedIn's. So this is the first thing you need to understand. You have to get your LinkedIn game very strong, and also you have to be very confident even if you do not know anything about this particular topic or anything about this particular agreement. You have to learn it up. Nothing will be available online. You have to do it from scratch. That is the power that you need to develop while you are trying to make something out of a practice which is very very niche, very niche, and very small community of people. That is how making a name in that particular space is also very easy. to get clients in that particular space is also very easy, and to retain that becomes a little difficult that way. But getting them is not very difficult. So however you want to keep it, you can keep it. So this is the entire trajectory around the media and entertainment laws, that as it works around in India. There are so many other drafts that I could have shared, so many other acts that could have been discussed, but those are theoretical parts, and I would just focus on how the drafts would work. If you need any template drafts, or if you need any help pertaining to this, I will definitely share one or few cleared up drafts with Priyadushinidhi Papiadi, and that's how things will, you can take it up from there and see how the things work, what are the clauses in place, what are the, why there is an indemnity, why this particular dispute resolution is given there, why we are not doing any other kinds of dispute resolution in place, what is the particular termination clause, why should it be 30 days and not 45 days pertaining to this, when should a new notice be sent out, why there should be clear communication pertaining to how the communication will work in the first place. These are all the key concepts of how you are drafting an agreement from scratch. Drafting is the mother of practice. Practice can wait, drafting cannot. You will might not have matters for the next 10 years as a junior counsel. There's have nothing called a junior counsel, as a counsel who just started out, to be very precise. But you will always have drafts to, help yourself build up a practice that no one else will build up. There'll be people who are senior most in the profession who, you can draft better than them, and they will start trusting you with the drafts. That is how it works in the profession. You just need to be informed, well informed, and need to start your drafting from scratch. That is how it will all work out. And I believe Ab Initio is also doing a wonderful initiative in, bringing in more practice oriented things. And I think that you should just keep in touch with them, and, get done with the basic drafting and the advanced drafting classes, because that is how, you are supposed to kind of, go forward with your professional space if you're a first generation lawyer, because no one will come and give any brief to you for the next 10 years. That is something you need to understand. You have to snatch briefs by means of your merit and by means of your intellect, nothing else, nothing lesser than that. Always keep that in mind. That is all from my end. Any questions, I would be willing to, discuss the same. And also, I might be a little exhausted because I just had a presentation, just have a presentation after this. So I'll just prepare for the same. So if you have any questions, we can definitely address it. I'll have 1 more hour to prepare myself for the next seminar. So any questions? Any questions, anybody? I'll be willing to answer.
So say I have a question.
Yes, please, Arijit.
Neither the story nor any character is drawn from real life events. Any similarity with them is purely coincidental, is a very
Yes.
common disclaimer that we see. And so
Common disclaimer. Very, very good.
can a director portray anything after putting up this disclaimer? Then what is the point of what is the legal validity of this disclaimer when we
This
see
is
that?
new. Yes. When you are doing a biopic, whenever you're doing a biopic, you have to buy the rights of, kind of portraying that from the family, If the person is deceased, if the person is living, you have to get the permission done. You have to get an NOC done, no objection certification done. That you are basing, this can be in two ways. You are either portraying a character, even if you're using names which are very trademark. If you use Amitabh Bachchan in a movie, you have to get the permission from the person who is the, holder of the particular trademark. That is, Amitabh Bachchan is trademark. Then this one is also trademark. Anil Kapoor is trademarked. So these are the things that you cannot use randomly. If you just make a character whose name is Anil Kapoor, you cannot do that. You have to get permission. So these are very basic nuances only lawyers will understand. Also, no character is no character, whatever, no character. The statutory disclaimer that is being given at the beginning of the movies, that is only done for the movies wherein there might be references, because every movie that has been made is through stories that you see every day, or through things that you see every day. So the entire point of the matter is that whenever you're doing something which is based on a particular event, you have to take permissions from them through a means of an NOC that is generally being done through NOC from the characters. If the names of the characters are very prominent and that is being used, otherwise they might just file case against. They might file suit against you, and even order for an injunction to so that is personality rights. There's something called a personality rights in intellectual property. The personality rights are not hampered, and very few actors actually have the personality rights in place. There are few actors whose signatures are also trademarked, like Amitabh Bachchan's. So these are very interesting case studies that you need to must go about it. It's not for all movies, it's for those movies which actually they say is not derived from any real life incident. But for those movies which are biopics and everything, you have to take a permission from the deceased family, or you have to either take a permission, give a remuneration pertaining to the same, or if that doesn't work, they will just be, if they are well to do people, they will not take any remuneration, they'll just give an NOC. You use my name and use the biopic accordingly. That is how it works. The IPs work in that manner. So IP is a very interesting space. You just have to navigate your way around IP. Orijit, am I clear on this front?
Okay, sir. I also have another question, which is very
Please tell
particular
me.
to specific to a
Please tell
movie.
me.
Have you seen the
Okay, please
movie
tell me.
Maharaja, released on Netflix?
No, I haven't watched it. I haven't watched it yet. You can
Okay, it
ask a
was
question if
drawn on
it's
the Maharaja
generalized.
libel case of 1854. It was
Okay, okay, okay. Yes, 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 yes. I
the
have read on it. I haven't watched. I didn't get time to watch on it. But yes, tell me, ask me
the
the question.
question was that the Pashupati, excuse me, the Poshumita sect. So the I
Okay,
was one of the petitioners on change.org. So
okay,
I
okay,
signed a
okay,
petition for stopping its release on change. So I know the story in some details. Even if
okay. Tell
the
me.
character in question, he may have used his position to do whatever immoral or so-called immoral acts. My question is, how can that one person be held representative of the entire sect, and then the filmmakers can tarnish the entire sect? That was the question. So the
Filmmakers
Posumuta,
can turn the entire sect.
yes,
Meaning,
sect
I
was the name of the sect was Poshu Magra sect. Okay,
okay. Mane,
so
you mean to ask me that how they can turn against a particular? Mane, you are representing this particular character is representing a particular sect, and how
yes,
this representation of the particular sect can actually, kind of disregard the respect of the entire sect. That is the
yes,
question, right?
yes, yes. So
The
that
point
was
is
the question.
the
So it
point is
was
it's a
challenged
similar
before the
thing, na?
Gujarat High Court.
Sorry.
Challenged before the Gujarat High Court,
Gujarat High
and
Court, challenge to the Gujarat High Court was there. Yes, definitely. I have read on it. I haven't watched a movie as you were just saying. Vijay, who was the actor? Vijay Sethupathe's movie, right? That Maharaja.
yes, the actor was Amir Khan's son, Junaid Khan.
Okay, I haven't. No, no, I haven't watched it. Yeah, I have read on it. The Gujarat High Court, the entire, perspective. The specific question that you ask is that the Gujarat High Court. There is not only this movie. Have you? I'll come to your question. Before that, I'll just ask you. Have you watched Kantara?
Yes, yes.
Uh, what was the what have you heard about the problems pertaining to Kantara? I had
I know
represented
it
the
was something to do with tantra and tantric
no, it
practices.
is no, that is that PIL you are talking about has been dismissed. The only problem issue was pertaining to a music, Varaha
Okay, okay.
Vara by Thaikudam Bridge. So the entire because I was one of the petition, I was working with Mr. Bhutoria only on this particular music, on this particular case. This music, what happened was that this music that was used by Kantara has so much similarity with this original music. But and then the petition was filed and the injunction was granted. Finally, the Kerala court finally said that you have to remove it or you have to change the background or that's how it should be worked out. They worked out extensively on the same. The only problem is whenever you're talking about any movies per se, there are so many other movies that deals with very social issues which you need to consider. Representing, yeah, definitely when you are talking about a sect and you are using the terminologies which are very specific to the particular sect, the sect can take an action, a collective action against your entire thing. Now it's totally depending on the court whether the obscenity clause will be taken up or not, will be considered or not, and whether the actions will be taken against it or not, or it will be kind of dismissed, as it happens in most of the cases. Many things are dismissed pertaining to these movies. Um, so completely believe that they have the, if they believe that their religious sentiments have been hurt somewhere down, or their sectorial sentiments have been, the sectorial would be a wrong word. I believe the sentiments pertaining to the sect has been harmed somewhere down. They
Sectarian.
can definitely sectarian, right? Thank you for helping with the word. So that will definitely that will definitely come under the purview of their protection of their individual identities, and they can file a suit before the court. Now it totally depends on the court on whether on what grounds or on what merit do they consider the particular thing, or whether actually that has happened or not. To weigh out the merits, I believe that the courts are capable and they have handled most of the cases very beautifully. So I believe that that is something that should be, left to the understanding of jurists per se, because the interim order, I believe, was given and it was finally the stay was removed, right? If I am not wrong, because no objection, no the content in it, I do not think that that was found to be very problematic. That is what the Gujarat High Court had finally said. I believe so, isn't it? It finally passed the release of the film.
Yes, yes.
Isn't
Yes,
it? Yes,
yes.
yes, that's how it works. So that's totally depending on case to case, actually. It's nothing on my part. So if I'm on the side of the petitioner, I'll do it in a manner. If I'm on the side of the respondent, I'll definitely push myself to say that it's not objectionable. If I'm on the side of the petitioner, I'll definitely say that it is objectionable and it is hurting the religious. This is hurting not only the not the religious element, but this, sectarial or what you said. I think that will be under question. So yeah, that is something that we can definitely deliberate upon pertaining to case on the case to case basis. So yeah, any other questions? Any other questions? Hello.
So do social media influencers and so-called
Yeah,
YouTube.
they are also under the purview of the media, and they are also under the purview of everything. They come under the they must follow the advertising guidelines, and there are a few things that you cannot like subjudice. Same thing, like if you're an actor and if you're a public figure, you cannot comment on something which is still subjudice, and you are also under the purview of the ASCII guidelines. What advertisement you can give, you since you're a social media influencer and not somebody who is apparently quote unquote a part of the showbiz, there will be certain ways in which the influencer guidelines, by the way, the influencer guidelines have also been mentioned in the Broadcasting Act. You should go and read the entire thing and should understand that that they have also been made a part of the, they have been made a part of the entire stakeholders while it comes to the Broadcasting Act, and they will also be penalized accordingly whenever there is a kind of a law that is being misused by them. So definitely they come under the purview of the same. They were not, but they are recently brought under the purview of the same, because there have been many difficult and there are very problematic things that have been happening around this their promotional activities around in social media. So yeah, that they're definitely under the same, under the scanner as well. Any other question? I think no more questions from my end. Priyadarshini, are we good to go now?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And it was really very, very insightful event that you had catered to ab initio, and we are really grateful for joining us at this point of time, uh, and taking out time for us from your such a busy schedule. And I could see that you just have half an hour left for another seminar that you just said you will attend
Totally.
to. Yeah,
Yeah. I
we are really really grateful, and we are looking forward more seminars like this, and to join maybe in collaboration with you and come out with some other
If
drafting
there are physical
courses.
seminars as well, we can definitely work out something around with my collaborative event with my firm as well, since I'm taking a few academic initiatives as well. So that can also be decided accordingly with colleges or departments if that works out, however that works out, because I'm totally open to new ideas and how to go about approaching and definitely help with more senior councils and senior academicians working towards the space to develop a better access between practice and theory. So that is something we need to bridge the gap. That is,
Yes,
there is no difference between a theory and practice. There it should be a complementary stance to each other. So I believe
yes,
that is how it must be working as well. And it's a brilliant initiative that Ab Initio is taking, and I completely very happy to see all my seniors from law school to taking this initiative forward. And I wish all of you the very best. Please stay connected with Ab Initio. That's how I think you will get a better grip on how you want to take your things forward from there in the practical space. So with that, I think I would end my note, and
yes.
uh,
Yeah,
we'll definitely catch up later, and I'll
definitely.
definitely share. There are a few materials I can definitely share with Priyadarshini, and she can kind of circulate whichever way that will help you to keep I'll also share my author's note as well if that is what you need, so that you can understand how briefly I have tried to take things forward, and you can read up more on the same. So that's how
Yes.
it will work out.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
Thank you
much.
so
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you so much. All the best to everybody.